The service dog remained stationed outside his former handler's room, stubbornly resisting attempts by staff to relocate him. "He doesn't even recognize you," one nurse observed. "He's too far gone." Despite this, the dog persisted. Then, one morning, he calmly positioned himself before the veteran, and suddenly, deeply buried, traumatic memories resurfaced. What actions did the dog take, and what did the veteran ultimately recall? Please subscribe and leave a comment indicating your location. Let's begin. The VA psychiatric facility's fluorescent lights created stark shadows as Sergeant Thomas Grady gazed blankly out the window. 6 months had elapsed since his transfer from Walter Reed, but time felt insignificant within the mental fog he experienced. The sound of rain on the window reflected the scattered recollections that briefly appeared, then vanished before he could hold onto them. "Good morning, Sergeant Grady," a voice said from the entrance. Dr. Elaine Monroe stood there with his file, her demeanor carefully empathetic. "How are you feeling today?" Thomas didn't respond. "The same as yesterday, Doc." His voice held the strained quality of a man who had recently been giving commands above the sound of weapons fire. The mark along his jawline was just an outward sign of the IED's impact. The real harm was hidden beneath his skull, where memories had been broken like glass. "Your latest scans show continued physical healing," Dr. Monroe began, settling into a chair. "Spare me the medical details," Thomas interrupted. 6 months of tests, and all of you can tell me is that I should remember. But I don't." These sudden shifts from clarity to disorientation had become a defining feature of his condition. He shifted abruptly, first displaying the bearing of a soldier, then becoming agitated, seemingly overtaken by disjointed memories without explanation. "You served as a sergeant in the 5th Special Forces. 3 tours in Afghanistan, injured 6 months ago in Kandahar," she pointed out, reiterating their established routine. "So you keep telling me," Thomas responded, a hint of frustration in his voice. "But it's just words. I don't feel it." The medical personnel approached Thomas with care. 3 orderlies had been injured during his previous episodes. His physical strength had returned more quickly than his mental stability, making him a potential hazard when combat memories elicited reactions without a clear connection. Dr. Monroe had accepted his case after 2 prior psychiatrists requested transfers. While others perceived a liability, she identified a distressed veteran caught between recollections and a loss of awareness. "Today we are going to attempt a different approach," she stated. Thomas laughed, a sound laced with cynicism. "Another quick fix?" Dr. Monroe responded, "Not at all. An unforeseen package has arrived for you. It seems to be from the past." A disturbance in the East Corridor caused people to notice as a uniformed officer guided a Belgian Malinois through security. The dog's ears stood up suddenly, its eyes fixed on Thomas from 30 yards away. Before the handler could respond, the Malinois pulled forward, drawing the officer a few steps. "Heel," the handler ordered firmly. Something about the command heel made Thomas feel a strange tremor, although he couldn't remember why. As staff gathered around the visitors, he withdrew to his room. Shortly after, Dr. Monroe arrived at his door, carrying a file. "Sergeant Grady," she said, "there's someone who might be of interest to you. A military working dog named Valor. These documents indicate he served as your canine partner for 14 months in Afghanistan." Thomas looked without expression. "I have no recollection of a dog." Dr. Monroe acknowledged, "That's understandable considering your current state, but Valor's handler has records confirming he was your assigned partner during your final deployment." "My partner?" Thomas repeated, the words feeling unfamiliar. "That's impossible. I would remember that. Would you?" Dr. Monroe asked softly. "You don't remember your squad mates or commanding officer?" Before Thomas could answer, a disturbance arose in the hallway. The Malinois had broken free and raced to Thomas's door, ears forward, body vibrating with energy. "Get that thing out of here," Thomas shouted, stepping back. Something about the dog's intense focus made him uneasy. The handler appeared shortly after, offering an apology as he reattached the leash. "I'm sorry, sir. He's never acted like this. Valor is typically very well behaved." "I don't know this animal," Thomas retorted, "and I don't want it close." The dog emitted a low whine, a sound unexpectedly unsettling, given its earlier assertive behavior. His gaze remained fixed on Thomas. "This wasn't part of my agreement," Dr. Monroe clarified. "Your previous superior officer arranged this. He thought that seeing Valor could potentially stimulate memory recall." Thomas looked at the dog, experiencing only annoyance. "It isn't working. Please remove him." As the handler began to take Valor away, the dog hesitated, firmly positioning his paws at the doorway. The resistance wasn't hostile, but resolute. "I will permit Valor to stay for a short time," Dr. Monroe stated. "Not in your room, but in the shared spaces." Thomas turned away, showing indifference. "Do as you please. You always do." As they led Valor away, the dog turned, his gaze lingering on Thomas. A soft whine, laced with a palpable sense of recognition and sorrow, escaped his lips. In the days that followed, staff noticed a peculiar pattern in Valor's behavior. The Malinois consistently positioned himself along Thomas's path, seemingly waiting. During physical therapy, Valor would appear in the hallway, pressed against the glass, his eyes fixed on Thomas. While Thomas was eating in the common area, the dog would position himself exactly 12 feet away, near enough to watch, but at a distance that caused Thomas discomfort. "He's acting like he's conducting surveillance," commented Jim, an orderly with a background in the Marines. "That's a tactical placement." On the fourth night, security cameras recorded Valor entering the supply closet where Thomas kept his personal belongings. The dog removed his combat boots and brought them to his door, setting them carefully at the threshold. Thomas found the boots the following morning. Instead of his typical anger regarding unwanted entries, he paused, observing them before storing them in his closet, a change from how he had handled previous items. The subsequent night, Valor brought forward another item, a set of dog tags. These, too, were positioned at Thomas's door with thoughtful placement. During therapy sessions, Valor remained outside Dr. Monroe's office. During challenging periods when Thomas's frustration grew close to violence, the dog would scratch at the door until someone opened it, then position himself between Thomas and the doctor, not aggressively but protectively. "He's not threatening," Dr. Monroe observed. "He's intervening, attempting to calm Thomas." Particularly insightful were unguarded moments. Surveillance footage showed Thomas watching Valor from his window. Personnel observed him possessing the dog tags Valor had provided, a personal link he was unwilling to admit. By the second week, the equilibrium between Thomas's opposition and Valor's continued efforts started to weaken. The critical moment occurred during a group therapy session Thomas had hesitantly participated in. 5 veterans were sharing experiences about their returns from war. When another veteran recounted losing his closest friend, it sparked a sudden, intense flashback in Thomas. "Get down!" Thomas yelled, tackling the Vietnam-era veteran across from him. "Sniper on the ridge. Get down or you're dead." Chaos erupted as Thomas, lost in a combat scenario, dragged the terrified man toward perceived cover. Staff attempted restraint, but Thomas's combat training made him formidable, even confused. Somehow, Valor pushed his way through 2 doors and rushed into the room. Instead of attacking, he positioned himself between Thomas and the staff. The dog leaned against Thomas's legs, then made a circle around him before settling directly in front of him, its eyes fixed on his face. The impact was instant. Thomas stilled, his anger giving way to bewilderment. Then, a sudden realization as he dropped to his knees. What is going on?" he whispered, looking around as if he were seeing the room for the very first time. The link was short-lived. As personnel attended to his victim, Thomas's confusion shifted to fury. Not directed at the veteran, but at Valor. "What in the world is this, huh?" he shouted, scrambling backward. Was this some kind of trick? Using animals to manipulate him? The incident led to an emergency staff meeting. Thomas had barricaded himself in his room, refusing meals and medication. "This dog is triggering severe reactions," the facility director argued. "We have other patients to consider." After debate, a compromise was reached. Valor would have 48 hours before being returned to the military program. The following morning, Thomas was in the garden, experiencing disjointed memories. He didn't realize Valor was near until the dog positioned itself directly in front of him. "Go away," Thomas snapped, I asked them to keep you away. Valor remained still, amber eyes focused intently on Thomas's face. Thomas stood up quickly. I said, go back. I don't recognize you. He began to walk away, but lost his balance as another memory surfaced. The village again. This time, a chemical smell was present beneath the dust. The sudden dizziness caused him to drop to one knee. When his sight returned, Valor was still present, resolute. What do you want? Thomas asked, his voice trembling. He pushed the dog with both hands. Valor endured the force, remaining unmoved. A quiet whine escaped, not of suffering, but of resolve. Get away, Thomas yelled, retreating rapidly. I don't know you. I don't remember you. His back struck the garden wall. Thomas slumped down, drawing his knees to his chest protectively. The weight of his circumstances overwhelmed him. A man without memory, his identity solely defined by the accounts of others. He existed between fleeting recollections and a vacant present. Just leave me alone, he murmured. The expected respite didn't arrive. Instead, Valor approached with measured composure. The Malinois made a single rotation, then settled with a controlled, ritualistic gesture. He extended himself before Thomas, resting his head directly on the toe of his boot in a defined posture, chin lowered, ears pricked, eyes positioned to meet Thomas's gaze when lifted. Thomas remained perfectly still. The particular angle of Valor's head, the weight on his boot, triggered a surge of recognition. The garden seemed to waver, superimposed with a different image. Dusty terrain, tactical equipment, night vision, and this very same pressure against his boot. Wait, the stance. Thomas spoke, the words coming naturally. Hold position. Valor's ears moved forward at the instruction, becoming even more still. Thomas looked at the dog, his heart pounding as pieces began to fit together. I know this. I know you. The orderly radioed softly for Dr. Monroe, understanding something important was occurring. With shaking fingers, Thomas reached out, pausing just above Valor's head. Upon making contact, Valor emitted a sound of such palpable relief, it was almost like a human expression. We trained together, Thomas stated, and memories began to coalesce for the first time since his injury. North Carolina, you were just a year old. You failed the standard program because you wouldn't leave my side during separation tests. Each word contributed to a clearer picture. Thomas gently scratched behind Valor's ear, precisely where the dog enjoyed it. A movement his body recalled instinctively. You slept at the foot of my bunk, Thomas said, his voice softening, radiating certainty and familiarity. Against regulations. Sanders protected us because you consistently reported his concealed whiskey supply. Dr. Monroe observed from the garden entrance, directing staff to maintain a distance. Thomas's fingers located a notch in Valor's left ear, a mended split almost imperceptible beneath the fur. A sniper round came too close in Cunard province. Should have heeded the alert sooner. Valor pressed his head more firmly against Thomas's hand, reinforcing the connection. I used to tell the guys you were smarter than half the lieutenants. Thomas's fingers traced along Valor's neck, finding an old scar beneath the fur. You took shrapnel intended for me outside Kandahar. Dr. Monroe approached cautiously. Thomas, you're remembering. He looked up, his eyes clearer than she had ever seen. Not everything, just him. Valor. The name felt correct now. We worked together. He was my responsibility and I was his. Your commanding officer believed your connection might break through the amnesia, Dr. Monroe explained. Memory is complex. Sometimes emotional connections access pathways logical thinking cannot reach. Thomas nodded, his hand never leaving Valor's fur. The details of the incident, the cause of the injury, and the reason for the separation remain unclear. However, this represents a significant improvement, Thomas stated gently, observing Valor's unwavering gaze. He never forgot, Thomas said softly, meeting Valor's steady gaze. Even when I did. Valor adjusted their posture, rising to sit upright next to Thomas instead of facing him, transitioning from a defensive stance to the collaborative positioning they had consistently used throughout numerous missions. Thomas refined his posture, his hand resting on Valor's back with comfortable familiarity. I need to recall more, he stated, his voice filled with renewed resolve. I must understand what transpired with us. In the days that followed, Thomas and Valor remained constantly together. Each hour yielded fresh recollections, as the dog's presence seemed to release long-blocked memories. We were deployed together 3 times, Thomas recounted to Dr. Monroe during a therapy session. The first deployment was a standard patrol and explosive detection mission. The second time, their duties changed to direct action assignments, a result of their effective teamwork. Village clearance operations were a primary focus. Valor was capable of detecting not only explosives but also concealed individuals and weapon storage areas. He had a distinct method of signaling for various dangers. 1 ear twitch indicated explosives, 2 signaled hidden personnel. He saved our unit on numerous occasions. Dr. Monroe observed that Thomas's speech patterns had changed. He displayed increased confidence, utilizing military terminology precisely, and a soldier's rhythm returning to his voice. Thomas acknowledged, "Having him here connects me to who I was. I still have gaps." Significant recollections emerged, prompted by specific cues. The framework provided context. Certain actions by Valor triggered related memories. For example, when the dog pressed his nose against Thomas's knee, Thomas remembered their established communication system. When Valor brought a tennis ball, Thomas recalled playing fetch behind their barracks after missions. Michaels, Thomas stated abruptly during a walk through the facility, Specialist Kevin Michaels, our unit's communication expert. I consistently kept butterscotch candies for Valor, even though I cautioned him against giving my dog sweets. By evening, Thomas began constructing a timeline, recording names and events upon our return. He included Jenkins, Rodriguez, and Patel. Captain Ellis led our unit. Lieutenant Cooper served as our immediate commanding officer. He was a good man, willing to listen when others might have asserted authority. When reflecting on a mission where a team member was lost, Thomas appeared visibly upset. Valor rested his head on Thomas's knee, a gesture that steadied him and kept the memory from escalating into a full-blown flashback. The last mission, Thomas began, his voice low, a mountain village close to the Pakistan border. A high-value target was using it as a waypoint. He struggled to break through the mental wall he's built to protect himself from reliving those events. I recall the approach, the village's layout, the teams splitting up. Valor and I secured the eastern buildings. Valor's ears perked up, his body stiffening as if recalling the same event. There was an ambush, Thomas recounted. It wasn't arbitrary, they were anticipating our arrival. The coordination was exceptional. Someone had compromised our operation. His breathing accelerated. Gunfire erupted from numerous locations. Radio communications were disrupted. Men were injured. We were trapped in a courtyard enclosed by buildings. Thomas's hand gripped Valor's fur.
Valor signal.
Not concerning enemy fire, we knew their locations. Something different. He continued attempting to obstruct my way, issuing the explosive signal, but he denied it with a head shake. That's where the memory breaks apart once more. I recall his warning. Then, only noise, pressure, and darkness. That's sufficient for today, Dr. Monroe stated kindly. You've achieved significant advancement. The key moment occurred when a delivery truck backfired in the parking lot. The sound reverberated through the recreation room where Thomas was playing chess. He crouched, pulling the other veteran down, scanning for threats. "AD!" he shouted, completely consumed by memory. This time, the memory played out with perfect clarity. We had cleared 2 buildings, Thomas explained later. Valor pressed against his side. Michaels and Cooper were pinned down. Ellis was coordinating extraction. Valor and I were moving to provide support when heavy fire erupted. His hand instinctively went to a scar on his arm. We reached the stone wall, and that's when the situation changed. Thomas explained that Valor's behavior altered, moving from measured alerts to frantic efforts to prevent our progress. He repeatedly issued the explosive warning, but I wasn't detecting the expected triggers. There was no disturbed earth, no visible wires. His voice tightened. I initially believed he was disoriented by the gunfire. I instructed him to advance twice, and twice he declined a behavior he had never exhibited before. Valor emitted a soft whine, seemingly recalling the event. Rodriguez was in distress, requesting assistance. I issued the instruction, authorizing movement, disregarding Valor's caution. Thomas momentarily closed his eyes. I directed him to provide healing, employing the command that bypasses his safety protocols. During the process, Valor violated procedure entirely. He attacked me, clamping onto my tactical vest, attempting to pull me back. I felt a surge of anger, believing his training had failed. I instructed him to release his grip and resume his task. Thomas's voice lowered. He complied with that final instruction. However, his posture indicated a problem. His ears were flattened, his tail tucked, and he moved as if he were being forced toward execution. 10 meters from Rodriguez, Valor abruptly surged forward, emitting his most urgent bark. That's when I noticed it. Almost invisible wires connected to a pressure plate located beneath Rodriguez. The IED wasn't intended for a single soldier, but for any responding team. Rodriguez had activated the initial sensor, but his weight was insufficient. Any additional weight would trigger the explosion. Valor had known all along. He moved forward, attempting to disarm the trigger, because I wasn't paying attention. I finally grasped the situation and began calling for assistance. I had just activated my radio when the explosion resulted in Rodriguez's immediate death, critically wounded Thomas, and physically distanced him from Valor. My final recollection prior to Walter Reed was Valor standing watch over me, suffering from shrapnel wounds, securing the area while I was unable to move. Thomas looked at the dog, his expression filled with years of emotion. I failed him. He provided every warning, and I disregarded them. You didn't fail him, Dr. Monroe said gently. You made a judgment call that they're trying to save your teammate, and Valor never gave up on you. That's why I couldn't remember, Thomas realized. My last thought was that I'd killed Rodriguez and endangered everyone by ignoring Valor. The mind protects us from what we can't process, Dr. Monroe explained. Thomas nodded, hand resting on Valor's back. I'm ready now. The following weeks brought a remarkable transformation. Thomas's memories resurfaced in a controlled manner as a significant obstacle dissolved. While Thomas regained his strength, Valor started briefly engaging with other struggling veterans, placing himself close to them before returning to Thomas. He has always possessed the ability to perceive when someone is in distress, Thomas noted. This quality distinguished him, allowing him to understand people better than they understood themselves. The morning of Thomas's discharge dawned with autumn sunlight streaming through golden leaves. His belongings were carefully packed: clothes, medications, a journal, and letters from former unit members. Valor observed the packing, remaining alert but composed. His military vest had been returned, accompanied by retirement documents should Thomas choose that option. Dr. Monroe knocked on the door, asking, "Everything ready?" Thomas nodded, securing his duffel bag. "As ready as I'll ever be." "Your sister has confirmed she will meet you?" "Yes, it still feels strange. Reconnecting with family I barely knew months ago." "Have you decided about Valor?" Thomas's expression became thoughtful. "I'd like to discuss this one last time," he said. They walked to the garden, the site of their breakthrough, with Valor accompanying them. "I've observed how Valor interacts with other veterans," Thomas began. "It's not solely with me that he finds connection. It's with anyone experiencing the darkness I once knew," Dr. Monroe affirmed. "His support for patients in crisis has been extraordinary. That's what distinguished him in combat," Thomas clarified. "Typically, military dogs are trained to identify particular dangers. Valor consistently recognized when something was amiss even before we possessed confirming data. He perceived changes in human actions that even seasoned soldiers failed to notice." Thomas stroked Valor's back. "I always believed our bond distinguished him," he said. "Now I realize it's inherent to him, this capacity to perceive distress." Dr. Monroe observed, "You're contemplating leaving him here?" Thomas affirmed, "A part of me wants to bring him back with me. He's more than just a dog. He was the one who found me when I was lost." Valor leaned against Thomas's leg, seemingly to show understanding. "However, I often think about others, still trapped where I once was. Veterans with no means of return. Thomas's voice grew strained. Valor discovered a route when others could not. How many others might he be able to assist? We've considered developing a therapy program based on your experience, Dr. Monroe stated. He won't simply be involved in it, Thomas emphasized. He would be central to it, a guide for healing through bonds we don't completely understand. Ultimately, Thomas knelt before Valor, looking him directly in the face. You have consistently understood your purpose better than anyone, he said gently, holding the dog's face with his hands. In Afghanistan, in this place, you have never forgotten what is important. Valor's focus was complete, his attention unwavering. My time of service is over, Thomas continued steadily. But yours is just beginning. Others need you now as I needed you. Those who are lost and uncertain of their return. Thomas touched his forehead to Valor's. You will guide them as you guided me. And once that task is done, I will be waiting. Thomas rose, regaining composure with military precision. Dr. Monroe will care for you. I will visit. This isn't farewell. The simply new assignments. He squared his shoulders. Valor, remain, he requested softly. A flicker of conflict briefly appeared in the dog's posture, a clash between instinct and years of training related to warring. Then Valor composed himself into a flawless sit, holding steady eye contact. Thomas acknowledged him with a single nod, a gesture of respect between peers, not master and dog. He then turned and departed, each stride demanding significant control. He made no backward glances. I'm out. Valor remained in a seated, attentive position, observing his partner's departure. Only after Thomas disappeared did the dog turn to Dr. Monroe, a silent understanding passing between them. While one mission had ended, another was beginning. Have you ever witnessed the extraordinary bond between a service animal and their human partner? The way they seem to communicate without words, understanding needs that go beyond basic commands. Valor and Thomas's story serves as a reminder that healing can originate from unforeseen places, and that profound bonds can endure even amidst memory loss. Considering Thomas's circumstances, one must wonder, would you possess the fortitude to part with a devoted companion, understanding their potential to guide others out of hardship, mirroring the support they offered you? If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to our channel for more extraordinary tales of service dogs and the lives they transform. Click the notification bell so you never miss our new uploads. Share this video with friends and family who appreciate the remarkable bond between humans and their canine companions. Be sure to check out our other canine hero stories now on screen, including the incredible story of a search and rescue dog who found a lost child during the worst blizzard in decades. We'll see you tomorrow, same time, with another brand new video. The funeral was silent, heavy with grief until the police dog acted. He jumped onto his handler's casket, and his subsequent actions left the entire room in tears. Here's what happened. But before we get into today's story, drop a comment below telling us where in the world you're watching from. And if you love extraordinary police dog stories like this one, make sure to hit that subscribe button. You won't want to miss what's coming next. The October morning arrived gray and somber, as if the sky reflected the sadness of those assembled at Oakwood Memorial Chapel. A cool breeze stirred the nearby maple trees, their crimson leaves sometimes detaching to briefly swirl, before landing on the gravel pathway where numerous police cruisers were arranged in precise formation. Within the chapel, the atmosphere was thick with the combined fragrances of polished wood, floral displays, and the palpable stress of shared sorrow. Officers in dress blues occupied the pews, their badges adorned with black mourning bands. Their faces, typically hardened by years of service, visibly strained to remain composed as they observed the flag-draped casket at the room's front. Officer Michael Mike Reeves, 34 years old and an 8-year veteran of the Riverside Police Department, a recipient of 2 commendations for bravery, rested silently within the wooden box. An official portrait, positioned on an easel next to the casket, depicted a man with keen hazel eyes and a gentle smile that didn't fully convey a solemn demeanor. In the front row, Mike's parents were seated, visibly burdened by the sorrow of outliving their son. His mother held a handkerchief, while his father, a former officer, gazed forward. Next to them, Mike's sister Elaine dabbed at tears that appeared unending, her shoulders shaking with each inhale. Near the side entrance, a disturbance caught the attention of several people. Officer Terrence Wilson worked to manage a Belgian Malinois, whose strong physique trembled with anticipation. The dog's golden-brown eyes moved quickly around the chapel, examining every face and every area, as if looking for someone expected to be present. "Easy, Ranger," Wilson said softly, tightening his hold on the leash as the dog made a low, mournful sound. Ranger had been Mike's partner for 4 years. Working as a team, they had located missing children, arrested dangerous suspects, and uncovered hidden contraband that could have gone unnoticed. They were the K-9 unit's most accomplished team. Now Ranger's ears twitched, his nose working intensely, showing uncertainty in his posture. 4 years prior, Officer Mike Reeves had been in the impersonal hallway of the regional K-9 training center, anxiously straightening his uniform collar. Following 6 years of patrol work, he received approval for the K-9 unit, a goal he'd held since his academy days. The training sergeant, a stern woman named Martinez with 20 years of experience visible on her face, guided him towards the kennels. She cautioned him, her keys making noise as they walked, not to become too attached too quickly. He would work with 3 prospects before final assignments were made. Some partnerships succeed, others fail. The dog's choice is as important as your own. A lively atmosphere filled the kennel area. German Shepherds, Belgian Malinois, and Dutch Shepherds were watchful in their enclosures. Martinez paused at the 3rd kennel, where a tan Malinois with distinctive facial markings stood rigidly at attention, amber eyes following every movement. "This is Ranger, 18 months old, imported from a European working line," Martinez said, observing Mike's reaction. "He has a high drive, high intelligence, and could be too intense for some handlers." A prior candidate found him unmanageable, describing him as too intense. Mike lowered himself to the dog's level, keeping eye contact. Typically, police dogs displayed immediate enthusiasm or aggression upon approach, but Ranger was an exception. He stayed perfectly still, evaluating Mike with a disconcerting intensity, as if peering directly through him. "Hey there, partner," Mike said gently. At those words, a slight alteration appeared in Ranger's stance. A minor change that only Martinez detected, his eyebrows lifting a little. The dog moved toward the kennel gate with careful steps, paused once to sniff at Mike's offered hand, then settled, holding eye contact. "Well," Martinez said, "that's certainly not what I expected." The bond was instant, though neither person nor dog could articulate it. When they started training together the following day, the other handlers observed in amazement as Ranger seemed to predict Mike's instructions almost before he voiced them. By the 3rd week, Martinez discontinued the rotations, formally assigning pairs. Their initial significant challenge arose 6 months later, a missing 10-year-old child in Oakwood Park. The search had been ongoing for hours, with numerous agencies searching the thick woodland as night fell and temperatures decreased. Mike observed Ranger assessing the scene, tracking a scent trail that other canines had overlooked. "He's detected something," Mike transmitted to the command post. "We are proceeding east towards the creek bed." Rain had begun to fall, washing away scent particles, but Ranger never hesitated. He led Mike through thickets and over fallen trees until they found the boy, huddled beneath an overhanging embankment, hypothermic but alive. Their partnership extended beyond statistics. Mike had remained single, his apartment becoming their shared domain. Morning runs continued regardless of weather. Evenings were spent reinforcing training exercises that had become more like games, their lives completely intertwined. Mike's parents had thoughtfully provided Ranger with a Christmas stocking, acknowledging him as part of the family. The 911 call was received at 2:34 a.m. on Thursday, reporting a domestic disturbance on Elm Street, a residential area of modest single-family homes. Dispatch records indicated this was the 3rd call originating from that address within the past 2 months, with prior incidents resolved without any arrests. Officer Chun was already en route, requesting additional support as per standard protocol. K-9-7 was ready to assist, as Mike had radioed, with Ranger alert in the specialized compartment behind him. Acknowledged K-9-7. The report indicated a male subject, possibly armed, with children present in the home. Mike's cruiser arrived approximately half a block from the address, maintaining dark lights to minimize the risk of escalation. Chen's patrol car was already on scene, positioned strategically to provide cover. Mike secured Ranger's tactical harness, and the dog instantly transitioned to working mode. "Report, what is the situation?" "Mike," she said as they neared Chen, who was positioned behind her vehicle door, hand on her holster. The male subject was identified as Jacob Reynolds, age 42. His wife had initiated the call, stating he had been consuming alcohol and had begun threatening her with a handgun when she announced her intention to leave him. 2 children were present inside the residence, aged 8 and 5. The house appeared dark, with only a single light illuminating the living room. Abruptly, the front door swung open, and a woman emerged, holding 2 children, all still in pajamas. "He's got a gun," she gasped, as Chen directed them towards the patrol cars. He stated he wasn't returning to jail. A records check verified Reynolds had previous arrests for assault and unlawful possession of a firearm. The situation had progressed from a domestic disturbance to a potential armed standoff. Reinforcements were on the way, estimated time of arrival 4 minutes. Dispatch updated, SWAT alerted but assembling. "We might not have 4 minutes, Mike responded, observing movement at the window. The subject appeared increasingly agitated. Additional patrol units arrived, officers taking positions around the perimeter. Mike released Ranger's leash, giving him a hand signal to stay close, a command that would keep the dog within 3 feet without restricting his movement. They proceeded to the side of the house, utilizing shadows for cover. "Got a visual," Mike reported quietly into his shoulder. Mike's subject in living room, confirmed armed, handgun in right hand, appears highly agitated. Captain Walsh's voice crackled over the radio. "Hold positions."
Ostage négociateur en route.
Reynolds, however, disregarded the order. The front door exploded inward. A figure appeared against the light within, weapon raised. "Stay back," he yelled, swinging the gun haphazardly between officers. Reynolds discharged a stray shot that struck Chen's patrol car. Officers retreated behind cover, issuing verbal instructions but refraining from firing due to the family's location behind vehicles. Reynolds moved down the front steps. One now pointed directly at the group, including his wife and children. Mike assessed the situation instantly. Reynolds had an unobstructed view of his family. Officers lacked a secure vantage point, and the man's finger was closing on the trigger. Mike gave Ranger the silent command they'd practiced repeatedly. 2 quick taps on his thigh, indicating an apprehension attack. Ranger surged forward with explosive speed, a tan blur in the darkness. At the same time, Mike moved to flank, positioning himself between Reynolds and his intended targets. Reynolds noticed the dog approaching and redirected his weapon towards the new danger. 2 shots echoed through the night. Ranger connected with Reynolds' arm, the expertly trained bite causing the man to drop his weapon. Both men went down, but Reynolds managed to fire first, with a bullet impacting Mike's chest just beneath his vest. A second shot followed from Mike's service weapon as he fell, hitting Reynolds in the shoulder, disabling him but not fatally. "Officer down! Officer down!" Chen's voice broke over the radio as she hurried to Mike, who had fallen onto the asphalt. Ranger kept his hold on Reynolds until another officer secured the suspect, then immediately moved away from the scene, a course of action he would not typically take, and rushed to Mike's side. The dog whined, pawing at his partner's chest where blood was quickly spreading across his uniform. "Stay with me, Reeves," Chen urged, applying pressure to the wound. "Bus is 2 minutes out." Mike's breathing came in shallow gasps, his eyes finding Ranger's. He whispered, "Good boy," lifting a shaking hand to touch the dog's head. "Best partner ever." Ranger lay down beside him, pressing his body against Mike's side as paramedics arrived. They worked frantically, loading Mike into the ambulance, but the bullet had struck at an angle that sent it beneath the protective vest, severing a major artery. Officer Michael Reeves was pronounced dead at Riverside Memorial Hospital at 3:28 a.m. While emergency personnel desperately attempted resuscitation, Ranger stayed in the emergency room hallway, with Officer Wilson holding his leash. The dog's eyes remained fixed on the trauma bay doors. When the doctor finally came out, shaking his head, Ranger appeared to comprehend before any words were spoken. His body drooped, the confident stance faltering as a howl began, a sound so intense, so resembling human sorrow, that seasoned emergency staff averted their gaze. Inside the chapel, the funeral service had commenced. Chief Roberts moved to the podium, his usual strong demeanor tempered by sorrow. Officer Michael Reeves represented the epitome of what it means to serve in the badge. He began to speak, his resonant voice firm despite the emotion evident in his eyes. During his 8 years of service, he demonstrated consistent courage, compassion, and dedication to this community. Nearby, Ranger's restlessness grew. Wilson held the leash securely, yet the dog's attention remained fixed, focused on the casket where his partner rested. The chief noted that Mike's devotion to his canine partner, Ranger, had forged one of the most successful teams in our department. Together they were credited with over 200 successful operations, saving countless lives and enhancing the safety of our community. Mike's mother wept softly, comforted by her husband's embrace. His sister Elaine remained stiffly beside them, sometimes touching the canine unit pin Mike had given her last Christmas. Captain Walsh then stepped to the podium, recounting a memory of Mike's first day on patrol. He arrived 30 minutes early, his uniform so impeccably pressed it appeared it could have cut paper. Walsh remembered, prompting a few sorrowful smiles. When I inquired about his promptness, he stated, "My dad always told me if you're on time, you're already late." Mike consistently exceeded expectations. As personal recollections transitioned into the official ceremony, Ranger displayed increasing signs of distress. The dog breathed rapidly, adjusting his posture, and kept his gaze fixed on the casket. Wilson worked to manage the situation, understanding the importance of the moment, yet obligated to ensure order throughout the service. The department chaplain commenced the religious segment of the service, his words of comfort seeming inadequate given the sight of a flag-draped casket and a room filled with grief. Though Officer Reeves walks through the valley of the shadow of death, he fears no evil, the chaplain stated. At these words, Ranger emitted a low whine that resonated through the quiet chapel, and several heads turned, with expressions of understanding rather than annoyance appearing on their faces. The service continued with the presentation of Mike's badge and service weapon to his parents. The department's bagpipe player moved to the front, the poignant melody of Amazing Grace echoing through the chapel. As the bagpipes ceased, a quiet stillness settled over the chapel. The funeral director walked to the podium, ready to provide directions for the procession to the cemetery. Prior to speaking, Ranger's demeanor changed significantly. The Belgian Malinois froze, his body trembling as if electrified. His eyes fixed on the casket widened. His breathing quickened, nostrils flaring as he perceived something only he could detect. Every muscle in his powerful frame tensed, coiling like a spring. "Something's wrong," Wilson whispered to Martinez, tightening his grip on the leash. "He's never acted like this before." Martinez recognized the signs. "That's not aggression," she whispered back. "That's recognition." At that moment, Ranger initiated his action with a swift advance that surprised Wilson. The dog broke free of the leash held by his handler. Multiple officers reacted to try and stop him, but Ranger was too quick. His actions were deliberate and purposeful as he sped down the central aisle. A collective intake of breath spread through the chapel as the Belgian Malinois moved toward the front, his paws making no sound on the carpeted floor. Mike's mother emitted a quiet cry, his father partially rising from his seat. Chief Roberts prepared to proceed, yet Ranger's behavior created a moment of hesitation for all present. It wasn't a display of hostility or fear, it was a sign of clear intention. Ranger approached the casket and halted, inhaling deeply around its sides. Then, with the same effortless skill that had distinguished him during his service, he jumped up, his front paws landing softly on the casket's rim. For a brief instant, he maintained his balance there, his amber eyes assessing the gathered mourners as if awaiting consent. There was no movement and no sound. A hush fell over the entire room. Ranger, with deliberate motions, pulled himself completely onto the casket, his nails producing the faintest clicking sound on the polished wood. The American flag covering the casket moved a little under his weight. The dog turned once, then positioned himself on top of the casket, directly above where Mike's chest would be. "Oh my God," Elaine whispered, tears flowing down her face. Ranger lowered his head, pressing his nose against the wood. He took a deep breath, then released it in a trembling exhale that appeared to hold all the grief imaginable. His ears pressed against his head as he whined, a sound so sorrowful it seemed to permeate the very walls. "Should I?" Wilson began, taking a tentative step forward. Captain Walsh raised a hand, halting him. "No," he said softly, "let him be." The dog's behavior shifted from active to observant. He assumed the familiar alert stance he had held many times in the patrol car, watchful, protective, prepared. His gaze moved across the room as if still performing his duties, still safeguarding his partner. Ranger remained perfectly still, his chest rising and falling in a pattern that appeared synchronized with an unseen power. The first shock among those grieving subsided into a deep silence, not distressing, but respectful. Then Ranger performed an action that shifted the moment from poignant to truly unforgettable. With deliberate slowness, he lifted his right paw and pressed it flat against the American flag, precisely over the spot where Mike's badge would be on his uniform. He maintained the position, unwavering, resolute, and clear. Elaine reacted with a gasp, her hand covering her mouth. "The salute," she breathed, her voice just audible to those close by. "That's Mike's special signal." A quiet buzz of conversation arose within the chapel, as those familiar with the meaning shared it with others. 3 years prior, Mike had developed a distinctive training cue with Ranger. It was a discreet signal, used exclusively between them, a customized gesture that Ranger would execute only in reaction to Mike's particular hand movement. This was not a component of regular police K-9 instruction. It was intimate, unique, and shared solely by them. Officer Chun, who was present the night Mike passed, moved closer to Captain Walsh. "Mike's last touch," she whispered, her voice cracking. Prior to the ambulance arrival, he touched Ranger's head in the manner he always used when issuing that command. It wasn't simply a gesture, Martinez explained softly to those present. It represented their method of conveying a message, signifying mission accomplishment when verbal communication was impossible. I have never observed another team exhibiting such a profound connection. As Ranger held the salute, his gaze remained steady and observant, as if anticipating additional direction. A profound quiet settled over the chapel, punctuated only by quiet weeping from Mike's family. Mike's father rose abruptly, his action capturing everyone's attention. The former officer moved toward the casket deliberately, maintaining a dignified posture despite the sadness visible on his face. He halted near Ranger, standing respectfully without touching the dog. Then, with careful control, he performed a formal police salute. "Mission accomplished, son," he said, his voice thick with feeling but audible in the still room. One by one, each uniformed officer in the chapel stood and repeated the gesture, a multitude of salutes recognizing not only their deceased comrade, but the connection they were observing. Even civilian mourners rose, palms on their chests, accepting something beyond common comprehension. Ranger maintained his posture for a few more seconds, then gradually lowered his paw. He adjusted his position near the casket, turning to look at Mike's father. The dog's ears rose, his keen eyes observing the man's face. "He was so proud to be your partner," Mike's father said to Ranger, his voice a quiet murmur. "Every day he told us how fortunate he was to have you." The chaplain, who had been observing with evident feeling, moved forward once more. "In 20 years of service to the department," he said, speaking to those present, "I have conducted far too many ceremonies like this one. I have never seen such a demonstration of the connection between an officer and his canine partner." He paused, regaining his composure. "It seems there are relationships in this world that even death cannot break." The chaplain's words appeared to fill the chapel, offering solace where it had seemed impossible just before. Mike's mother, who had been almost devastated, stood a little straighter, her gaze fixed on Ranger. Mike frequently claimed the dog understood everything, she stated, in a voice audible to those around. He asserted Ranger could occasionally read his mind. She wiped her eyes with a handkerchief. I believed he was overstating things. Chief Roberts approached the podium once more, his own demeanor noticeably strained. I believe we should modify our proceedings, he remarked, glancing at the funeral director. It seems Ranger will be with his partner for the rest of the service. Throughout the service, Ranger stayed on the casket, a quiet protector watching over his companion. The funeral director, showing impressive flexibility, modified the arrangements to accommodate the dog. The customary pallbearers were in place, though questions remained regarding the concluding procession. We need to proceed to the cemetery shortly, the director said to Captain Walsh. Walsh responded with a nod, then moved towards the casket with deliberate steps. Ranger spoke softly, mirroring the tone he had often heard Mike use. We need to take Mike now. The dog's ears twitched at the familiar name, his amber eyes following Walsh's movements. He remained still, shifting his weight and settling more firmly atop the American flag. Mike's sister, Elaine, rose from her seat, dabbing her eyes with a crumpled tissue. She walked towards the casket, her steps unsteady but resolute. She had observed the strong connection between her brother and his canine partner from the very beginning. She recalled numerous family dinners where Ranger sat at Mike's feet, and holidays where the dog received gifts alongside everyone else. Ranger, she said softly, extending her hand palm up, mirroring the gesture she had seen Mike use many times. It's okay, boy. The Belgian Malinois' attention turned to her, his nostrils flaring slightly as he analyzed her scent. The scent was close enough to Mike's to be recognized as belonging to his family. His ears moved forward, his head tilting as if assessing the situation. Mike would be so proud of you, she said, her voice cracking. You were the best partner he could have wished for, the best friend. Something in her words, or perhaps her tone, appeared to connect with the dog. Ranger looked from Elaine to the casket below him, then back to her. A quiet whine came from his throat. It wasn't a sound of distress now, but of inquiry. I know, she murmured. I miss him too. With extreme gentleness, she placed her hand on the dog's back. Ranger tensed briefly, then relaxed into the touch. Elaine stroked his fur, mirroring the way she'd seen her brother do after their shifts together. We need to take Mike to his resting place now, she explained, speaking as if the dog understood every word. Perhaps he did. Will you help us do that? The chapel remained utterly silent, with everyone holding their breath as they observed this private moment. Ranger regarded Elaine for a considerable time, then rose slowly and deliberately. His movements were measured and respectful, ensuring his stability on the casket's curved top. For a brief moment he stood rigidly, resembling a dog in peak condition. Then, with a grace that moved many to tears, he descended from the casket, stepping gently onto the carpeted floor near Elaine. Wilson moved forward with the leash, but Elaine halted him with a raised hand. Let him walk with us, she said, with no restrictions. Mike would have wanted it. Chief Roberts gave his consent, and Wilson moved aside. The pallbearers arranged themselves, raising the casket with coordinated precision. As the solemn procession began its descent down the central aisle, Ranger stepped alongside the casket, positioned at heel, precisely where he would have walked beside Mike during patrols. Outside, the autumn air held the fragrance of rain in the distance. The hearse door closed with a quiet finality, sealing the last chapter. Ranger watched, a flicker of confusion returning to his stance. Wilson approached, anticipating the dog might need reassurance, but before he could offer the leash, Ranger acted. The Belgian Malinois walked purposefully to the police motorcycle that would lead the procession, Mike's motorcycle, now solemnly draped in ceremonial black bunting. Ranger settled beside it, adopting the familiar posture he'd used countless times when Mike was getting ready for their shift. Captain Walsh looked at the motorcycle officer who would be leading the procession. Can you accommodate him? The officer, who had previously worked with Mike and Ranger for years, responded immediately. It would be an honor, sir. With care, the officer assisted Ranger into the specially adapted sidecar, designed for K-9 transport during parades and ceremonial events. The dog relaxed, his demeanor alert yet composed, as if accepting the situation. Upon arrival at the cemetery, The concluding ceremonies proceeded with military formality. The honor guard conveyed the casket to the gravesite, with Ranger following closely, still unrestrained but maintaining impeccable control. The chaplain offered concluding words of solace as the casket was placed. As the formal folding of the flag commenced, Ranger observed with unwavering attention, following each action. The carefully folded triangle was given to Mike's mother, who held it close. Next, the rifle salute occurred, 3 volleys that echoed through the autumn air. Ranger reacted slightly at the initial shots, but remained in position. By the 3rd volley, he remained perfectly still at attention, seemingly acknowledging the respect being shown. As the bugler played taps, the somber notes lingered in the air. Ranger advanced 3 steps. With careful movements, he lifted his paw again, pressing it against the casket in that customary salute, a concluding gesture between comrades that moved many to tears. When the final note subsided, Ranger retreated, then settled down near the gravesite, his chin resting on his paws. He remained steadfast until the last mourner had left. The cemetery gradually emptied, with mourners departing in small groups, many taking a moment to look back at the striking scene. A devoted dog kept watch near his partner's final resting place. Mike's family were the last to leave the gravesite. His father knelt beside Ranger, placing a calloused hand on the dog's back. "You'll always have a home with us, boy," he said, his voice thick with feeling. Mike would have wanted us to support one another at this time. The Belgian Malinois looked up at him, its amber eyes reflecting a depth of understanding that went beyond the boundaries of species. He shifted a little closer, acknowledging the bond, then turned his attention to the casket now being placed in the ground. Captain Walsh came forward, taking off his formal hat and holding it to his chest. He stated that the department had considered Ranger's future. Traditionally, canines are retired after their handlers pass away. Mike's mother looked up sharply. He was too young to retire. Too skilled. Walsh nodded. "That's what we believe as well. With your permission, Officer Wilson has volunteered to become Ranger's new handler. They already share a connection, and Wilson initially trained with Mike." Elaine wiped away fresh tears. Mike would agree. He often said Wilson was the only other officer Ranger seemed to truly listen to. As if in agreement with her words, Ranger stood, shaking his coat slightly. He glanced between the family members and Walsh, then purposefully moved to stand beside Wilson, who had come closer quietly. "I'll never replace Mike," Wilson said, his voice faltering. "I wouldn't attempt to, but I pledge to you and Ranger that I will respect their partnership in our work together." Ranger looked once more at the gravesite, his stance conveying a sense of finality, an acceptance that had not been visible previously. With deliberate movements, he turned and walked beside Wilson toward the waiting police vehicles. He did not look back. As any good officer would, he was moving forward, carrying the legacy of his fallen partner with him into whatever missions awaited. The bond between a canine officer and their handler exemplifies one of the most sincere partnerships in law enforcement, founded on absolute trust, steadfast loyalty, and a connection that transcends verbal communication. The final tribute given by Ranger serves as a poignant reminder that profound feelings are often conveyed through actions rather than words. Have you ever observed a moment where an animal appeared to comprehend death or loss in a manner that seemed inexplicable? What fosters such strong connections between humans and their canine partners that they can surpass even the final parting? If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to like and share it with someone who appreciates the extraordinary bond between handlers and their canine partners. These incredible dogs risk their lives alongside human officers every day, demonstrating courage and loyalty that deserve our recognition and respect. Subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications so you never miss another powerful story about police canine heroes. Our collection of true stories about dogs keeps expanding, with new videos added each week to display these extraordinary collaborations. Please view the suggested videos currently displayed for additional moving narratives that emphasize the steadfast commitment of police dogs nationwide. We will also see you again tomorrow at the same time with another fresh video.